Last year, a teacher in Texas opened her retirement account statement, sat down at her kitchen table, and just stared at it. She hadn't touched anything risky. No crypto, no meme stocks, no Tesla calls. She did everything right, put her money in the safe part of her portfolio, and went to sleep. She lost $31,000 in a single year. She called her financial advisor and asked the obvious question: how does the safe part of my portfolio lose money? And he said, and I'm paraphrasing but only slightly, well, when rates rise, bond prices fall. It's just how the market works. That's not an explanation. That's a weather report from someone who forgot to mention the hurricane. So here's the actual explanation, the one she deserved 3 years before it cost her $31,000. That loss wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. It was the result of a single market, one that most people on Earth have never once looked at directly, doing exactly what it always does. A market worth $145 trillion, bigger than every stock market on the planet combined, bigger than the entire global GDP. And it doesn't just control retirement accounts. It sets your mortgage rate. It decides whether your landlord raises rent next year. It determines whether your employer can afford to keep you on payroll. It's why borrowing money went from cheap to brutal almost overnight. It's why the government of an entire G7 country fired its prime minister in 45 days. This is the bond market. And this isn't a video about some boring thing your grandfather owned. This is about the invisible machine that quietly prices your entire life, and the fact that almost nobody ever explains how it actually works. My name is Jack, and I have spent an embarrassing amount of time reading about a market that has all the personality of a tax form and twice the consequences. If you've ever wondered why your safe investments suddenly weren't, why mortgage rates doubled in less than 2 years, or why a government can get fired by a financial market, subscribe, because by the end of this video, you will understand money better than most people who work in money. That's not me being generous. That's me being honest about how little most people in finance actually explain. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with something stupidly simple, because I promise you, everyone overcomplicates this. A bond is an IOU. That's the whole thing. Someone needs money. A government, a company, a city that wants a stadium it absolutely cannot justify. Instead of walking into a bank, they borrow directly from investors. You hand over $1,000, they promise you 2 things: a fixed interest payment every year, called the coupon, and your $1,000 back on a specific date called maturity.
The U.S. government does this constantly. It's called a Treasury. Apple does it. Every major company does it. And when a company with shaky finances does it, Wall Street calls those junk bonds, though they've since rebranded them high yield because, apparently, junk doesn't print well on a prospectus. Now, here's the part that will save you from making the same mistake that teacher in Texas made. Let's say you buy that $1,000 bond paying 2%. You get $20 a year. Fine. Boring. Moving on. Now imagine a year later, interest rates rise. Brand new bonds, same $1,000, same borrower, now pay 5%. That's $50 a year. Question: who's buying your bond now? You walk up to an investor and say, "Want this? It pays $20 a year." And they say, "Why would I do that when the government is handing out $50 next door?" Your bond didn't change. It's still doing exactly what it promised, but it is now the financial equivalent of a used iPhone 11 in a world that just released the iPhone 16. It works perfectly. Nobody wants it at full price. The only way to sell it is to drop the price. You drop it until that fixed $20 payment works out to roughly 5% for whoever buys it, which means selling your $1,000 bond for somewhere in the $700. You just lost money on the safe investment. This is not a niche scenario. This is math, and it has destroyed savings accounts, collapsed banks, and removed at least one world leader from office. So here's the rule. Write it down, put it somewhere you'll see it. When interest rates go up, existing bond prices go down. When rates fall, bond prices go up. They move in opposite directions, Always, no exceptions. Every disaster I'm about to show you is just this one rule operating at a bigger and bigger scale. Now here's where it gets cinematic, because this exact rule, the one we just covered in 3 minutes, started taking down bigger and bigger targets, one at a time, like dominoes. Domino 1, Silicon Valley Bank, March 2023. SVB was not a reckless bank. They weren't buying crypto or betting on meme stocks. They took in a flood of deposits during the tech boom and parked over $91 billion into long-term government bonds, the safest assets you can buy. Then interest rates spiked, and by the rule you now know, those bonds silently lost more than $15 billion in value on paper. SVB sold part of the portfolio at a $1.8 billion loss, told investors, asked for fresh capital, and in 48 hours, depositors panicked and the 16th largest bank in America was seized by regulators. Not because they gambled, because they bought boring bonds at the wrong time, funded by deposits that could leave in a day. That's your rule at bank scale. If this is connecting dots you didn't even know were missing, hit like. It's free, it takes 2 seconds, and it tells the algorithm that people actually want to understand how their money works. Domino 2, the United Kingdom, September 2022. New Prime Minister Liz Truss announced $45 billion in unfunded tax cuts. The bond market looked at the math and said, loudly and publicly, absolutely not. Investors dumped UK government bonds so fast that 30-year yields spiked more than a full percentage point in 3 days. That detonated leveraged strategies inside British pension funds, the ones holding retirees' life savings. Those funds were forced to sell bonds to raise cash, which pushed prices lower, which forced more selling, a doom loop with the entire UK retirement system inside it. The Bank of England launched emergency bond purchases. They later admitted some pension funds were hours from collapse. And a British tabloid, my personal favorite economic indicator, set up a live stream of a head of iceberg lettuce next to a photo of Truss. The question? Which one would last longer in office? The lettuce one. Liz Truss resigned after 45 days, the shortest prime ministership in British history. The bond market did not send a letter, it did not vote, it just moved, and a G7 government fell. That's your rule at the country scale. Domino 3, the safest investment on earth, 2022. Here's the one nobody talks about. In 2022, long-term U.S. Treasury bonds, the most trusted financial instruments in the history of human civilization, lost 39.2% of their value. 1 year, 39%. One researcher checked the records and found you'd have to go back to 1754 to find a worse year for those bonds. There were 13 colonies. The United States did not exist yet, and still, no year has been that bad for bonds. The classic 60-40 retirement portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds as your seatbelt, lost about 17% that year. Not because of a market crash, not because of a recession, because the safe part and the risky part fell at the same time, for the first time since 1974. Millions of people opened their statements and discovered the cushion was the thing doing the damage. That's your rule at the civilization scale. I'm not a financial advisor. This is what I wish someone had explained to me years ago, back when I thought a Treasury bill was something Congress debated. First, stop donating money to your bank. The average savings account pays around 0.5%. A 3-month Treasury bill currently pays around 3.7%. A high-yield savings account pays similar. Same safety, 8 times the return. Your bank is counting on you never running this comparison. Disappoint them. Second, know the difference between a bond and a bond fund. If you buy an individual treasury and hold it to maturity, you get every payment plus your full principal back, guaranteed. Rates can do whatever they want, you're fine. A bond fund never matures. It replicates every single day, which means when rates rise, the losses sit on your statement and stay there. Neither is wrong, but you deserve to know which one you own before it happens to you. Third,
Look up your fund's duration. It's on the fact sheet. It tells you how much your fund drops for every 1% rise in rates. Duration of 6, you lose roughly 6% per rate point. Duration of 17, you move like a tech stock without the upside. The retirees who got hurt in 2022 weren't reckless. They just owned a duration they didn't know they had. Fourth, watch the 10-year Treasury yield. It takes 5 seconds. When it rises, mortgages, car loans, and business borrowing follow. When it drops sharply, the market is usually bracing for something bad. It is the closest thing the economy has to a check engine light. You are now one of the few people who knows what it means. Here's the thing nobody tells you. You have been participating in the bond market your entire adult life. Every mortgage payment, every car loan, every dollar in the stable sleeve of your 401k. You are always in the game. You just never got handed the rule book. And there is an entire industry that is perfectly comfortable keeping it that way. But now you know the one rule everything runs on. Rates up, prices down. You've watched it take down a bank in 48 hours, a prime minister in 45 days, and the safest investment in 270 years of financial history. You don't need to trade bonds. You don't need a finance degree. You just need to stop being the only person at the table who doesn't know why the safe part of a retirement account lost $31,000 in a single year, because this market is going to keep pricing your life either way. The only question is whether you can finally read the price tag. See you in the next one.